Hi everyone, my name is Emmy, and today I'll be doing my sexual variation presentation on premarital sex and how social learning theory relates to that. I want to start off by saying, for this presentation, I will dive deeper into premarital sex and how it's been looked over historically and also in modern time. I will also be using social learning theory as a guiding structure for this presentation. Okay, so what is premarital sex? Well, it's when two individuals have sexual intercourse before marriage. What is the social learning theory? The social learning theory says that individuals tend to learn different behaviors and attitudes through the use of observation, imitation, and even modeling. So, most people don't just learn from their own experience, but rather from watching their family members, peers, friends, and even media figures as well. All the behaviors that are rewarded and celebrated are the behaviors that are more likely to be replicated, while the behaviors that are going to be penalized and frowned upon are the behaviors that most people tend to avoid. So, when applying the social learning theory to premarital sex, it is very important to look at how different role models, media, and even religion, and also how family expectations can also contribute into shaping individual sexual behaviors and also beliefs. So let's move on to the historical view of premarital sex. I want to start with the cultural and time period. So, the 1960s around the world was a time of major cultural transformation. So, this was often called the sexual revolution. This shift was especially strong in the Western countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, and even Northern Europe. But its effects also reached other regions as well. Increased access to education, new forms of media, and even the invention of birth control, which, yes, was invented or approved in the 1960s, and broader movements of civil rights and women's rights all encouraged greater openness about sexuality across the world. Informal and cultural or social acceptance. So, in many Western societies, premarital sex became more common and socially accepted. During the 1960s, especially amongst young adults, this was just okay. So, the idea that should only happen within marriage began to fade away, although older generations often held on to their more traditional views. In a non Western society, changes were definitely slower, and in many parts of Africa, the Middle East, and even Asia, traditional expectations of virginity before marriage remained strong. And though changes were happening and exposure to Western media sometimes introduced beliefs to young youth, they still remain strong. Still, premarital sex was often practiced in private, where it was not publicly accepted. So, if they did choose premarital sex, it was usually behind closed doors, in private where no one knew. So let's move on to the Islamic views during the 1960s. So during the 1960s, Islam continued to strictly forbid premarital sex, and according to the Quran, sexual activity was actually not allowed within marriage. Was only allowed within marriage and was seen as a sacred responsibility. So, Islamic society strongly emphasized virginity and modesty more than premarital sex. Premarital sex was considered this major sin and could damage a person's reputation and also their family standing in the community as well. So, while some young people in Muslim majority cities were exposed to Western ideas through these movies, televisions, media. Most Islamic communities remain deeply committed to their traditional religious values. So, their religious leaders were there to reinforce these teachings, and even as other parts of the world were experiencing these social changes, Islamic societies strongly resisted the shifts in beliefs toward premarital sex and, still remain strong with their beliefs. Let's move on to how social learning theory explains the lack of acceptance for premarital sex. Well, in Islamic societies, the younger people learn from their family, religious leaders, and even their community examples as well. Premarital sex was openly condemned, and modesty was praised. So, social rewards supported chastity, and social punishment discouraged breaking religious rules. Strong modeling and reinforcement helped maintain traditional sexual values. Moving on to contemporary U.S. view of the sexual variation, premarital sex within the last 5 years. Um, let's start with the informal slash cultural and social acceptance. Premarital sex is widely accepted across the U.S. Across most of U.S. society today. A majority of adults across any age group view this as such a normal part of the dating lifestyle, and even um, a normal thing for building relationships. Cultural expectations have definitely shifted more, uh, so much that waiting until marriage is actually now an exception rather than a rule and not a rule. Younger generations, such as millennials and Gen Z, so us, are even more accepting of this, and older generations have also become more accepting of this over time. Moving on to media portrayal of premarital sex. The US media often shows that premarital sex is good and shows it in a positive way. TV shows like Euphoria, Sex Education, and even Bridgerton, those shows have openly explored this premarital sexual relationship without any shame. So they show it like it's normal. Social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, they all encourage open conversations about this, and also relationships as well, making it okay and making it seem okay for others. And moving on to the media frames premarital sex as part of this personal freedom and expression rather than uh, right or wrong. And lastly, the social learning theory and how it explains contemporary acceptance. Social learning theory explains today's wide acceptance of premarital sex as something that is okay because they see others look at it as okay. And so young people learn behaviors by observing media peers and public conversations. So, like I had just mentioned before, they see their peers are okay with it and they see that it's this good thing. And so they also will start to believe that it is this okay behavior. Positive portrayals in movies, shows, and social media help normalize premarital sex, so making it seem okay again. Social approval and positive examples also are big things to that encourage this behavior. In conclusion, my predictions for the future are in the next 5 years, premarital sex will stay widely accepted in the US, and actually, I feel that they will grow, and over the next 100 years, I think it will become more normalized globally. And I think that some religions will start to shift their beliefs, even though they've stayed strong for a while. And future acceptance will depend on which behaviors are modeled and socially reinforced. So, how social learning theory holds up in this? In the 1960s, Islamic and traditional societies used social modeling to promote chastity. Youth learned from religious leaders, family, and community norms. In contemporary US, youth now model behavior from the media and even their peers and open conversations they have with others. Positive reinforcement today supports sexual freedom rather than restraint. And that's all. Thank you for listening.